podcasts.
That's right, this is the Games Explained podcast with your hosts,
Dan, Ben,
and Matt. 3 syllables of fun for 3 hours of content. Just kidding, won't be that long.
That's it. That's the intro, ship it.
So we're, the format of this podcast was decided upon a minute ago. And it is that, the first half we're going to talk about games we enjoy. Board games, maybe card games, maybe lawn games, maybe...
Those are illegal now.
Lawn darts. They're not all lawn darts.
Okay.
There's Cube and
Bocce ball,
croquet.
Bocce ball is sick.
Small tennis. Oh, badminton. It's called badminton.
Yeah, something like that.
And then the second half, we're going to talk about a topic and maybe brainstorm games that could exist, but maybe don't, or maybe do. So Dan, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, you know what? The game that I'm into right now is King Domino. And Queen Domino. More specifically Queen Domino, but it's one of those things where like so Queen Domino is like a standalone game that builds off of the mechanics of King Domino, but it's like one of those things where if you throw people into Queen Domino right away, it's like too much for people to handle. So you gotta start with King Domino and like ease them into it.
So it's not a refinement of King Domino, it's an addition.
It's basically King Domino Plus.
Oh.
So King Domino is like, you have a bunch of these rectangular tiles, which are dominoes, and they each have 1 or 2 types of land on the one side, and by the end of the game you have built yourself typically a 5x5 grid of different types of land. At the end of the game you need to have built it such that you have a large property with lots of crowns, because crowns multiplied by the tiles that you have earn you points at the end of the game. Mm-hmm. So it's matching, and it's a little bit of luck because you're drawing from this pile of randomly shuffled dominoes. But you also have to think ahead and think about like what other people are doing, and you can sort of see a couple moves ahead as you play the game. And so you have to there's some planning and all these other kinds of things that are part of it. And yeah, and the art is great.
So what does Queen Domino add?
Queen Domino is
like a stock trading element?
Yeah, basically you have to have your index open as you play the game and get ready to go. Yeah. So Queen Domino is basically all of the elements of King Domino are there. So originally there's like, if I'm not mistaken, the types of land are like wheat and wood, like forest, and swamp and gold and water.
There's a mine.
Yeah, I think that's the gold one. And then, yeah, there's a pasture or whatever. And then in Queen Domino, they add a town type of land. And so it's red.
That's where the auctions happen, right? Like
that's where you bring your gold pieces, gold for cash immediately.
Gold for cash immediately.
And then, so in these red squares, you can buy these buildings that do different effects. So now you have this board where you have a stack of building tiles, and they're only squares, because for each square on your domino you could have a different building. And as you go through this stack, they do different effects. Like they could earn you just straight up points at the end of the game. They could give you knights, which give you the ability to tax on your different pieces of land. You could earn favor with the queen, and the queen helps to like, if you have her in your kingdom, everything costs less. At the end of the game, she is another multiplier in addition to the crowns that you earn in your kingdoms.
So are you choosing to like buy these bonus things with your points? Like, is it a sacrifice of points?
Good question. Yeah. So they add a currency to the game. So now you have coins. So you start the game with 7 coins and a knight. And when I put down, so there's 3 new actions that you can take on a turn, and they're optional. So in the original game, you place a domino in your kingdom, and then you claim a new domino for the next round. Yeah. So that's how you're thinking ahead, right? Yeah. So that's King Domino. In Queen Domino, you do both those things at the start and end of your turn, or one at the start and the other at the end. Place and then claim at the end of the turn. And in between, you can do 3 new things. One of them is tax, where you place your knight down on one of the new pieces of land that you played, and then you immediately get a number of coins equal to the number of squares that you have of that property type. So if I just played down my 4th wheat square and I'm like out of money, I place my knight down to tax my wheat area and I get 4 coins, so then I can buy stuff from the bank. The second optional option that I can do is buy a town. I have to have a red square to play it on, or else I can't do that option. And the last thing I can do is I can bribe the dragon.
Bribe
the dragon. Yes. You can pay 1 coin. 1 person per turn can pay 1 coin to get the dragon out of his cave, or her cave. Go to a building and destroy that building, and it's gone from the game for the rest of the game.
Are you kidding? You can sabotage people?
Yeah. So there's like certain... So for example...
Hitman Dragon out there?
Yeah, basically. So let's say Ben has like... He's got like 4 different segments of forest. And there's this one building that comes out, and it's like, you get a bonus 2 points for a different segment of forest in your kingdom. And I'm like, well, I don't have a place to put a building, but I really don't want Ben to have that piece, so...
You can just nuke it.
I'll just nuke it. But you keep the dragon in this cave, and then you like put him down on that square to show he's been used. I can't nuke anybody else's turn.
Oh, so you only have the dragon one time, or?
Yeah, like 1 person in that round can use the dragon. So once the dragon is out, nobody else can use the dragon for that round.
But like,
it comes back every round.
At the end, yeah, next round it's back.
So I could be the person who nukes people with dragons every round.
If you always happen to have the first turn, then you always nuke people.
Interesting. So that adds quite an extra element of combative behavior.
Yeah, because but there is some of that in the original game, in that you could like, if I'm usually only do it once you are totally like screwed out of a turn. Like if all the pieces that show up when you flip them are bad for you, you're just like, okay, well, what can I pick that everybody else wants?
Yep.
And then mess everyone else up.
So is it the same with the dragon, where like, I don't really want to build a thing or do another thing, I'll just hit someone?
But the thing with that is that you can do both. You can both build and like, that's something in addition to the other things you can do. So it's purely attack people.
So the first person is gonna attack someone unless they are feeling...
Well, it costs extra money though, so you have to ration your cash.
Yeah. So the buildings cost between 0 and 5 depending on where they are on the board. They always shift down. Like if, let's say I bought one of the cheapest ones, at the end of the round they all shift down to take the place of the cheap one.
It's like the small world selection system.
Sure.
Where the one no one wanted becomes cheap.
Sure. I'm unfamiliar, but that sounds exactly like it. Yes, that is what it is. So otherwise it's the same. Like the buildings just have extra conditions for you to make points. Definitely more complicated and like more stuff going on, but like once you've played King Domino a handful of times, then you're looking for something. Yeah, you're looking for something more.
Ready to level up.
Yeah. So yeah, those are King Domino and Queen Domino. Love them.
Nice. That sounds like a tasty time. Maybe we'll have to do a video for Queen Domino sometime.
I would love that.
I can talk about a game that I played recently. It is a fairly simple game. It is called Battle Sheep.
Battle Sheep.
Yes, it's pretty great. I really liked it because it's easy to get into with people that are like, they're new to the game or just new to board games in general. It's a pretty simple mechanic. But it also has like some pretty decently heavy strategy to it because basically the game has 2 phases. The first phase, everybody's handed a stack of map tiles, and the map is a hexagonal grid, and each tile is 4 hex spaces kind of clumped together to make a little diamond shape. So they're all the same shape, but everybody goes around and takes turns placing one of their map tiles in the map. And so you build a new map for every single game you play. And so the terrain is always different. And then once everybody's placed all their map tiles, they take their stack of, I think it's 16 discs that all have a sheep on them. And you have to find one place on the outside of the map and place your entire stack of sheep discs on a space there. Once everyone's picked a space, then you go around taking turns, and you have to take one of your stacks of discs, split it up somewhere. You can take as few as 1 disc off, or you can take all of them except for one, but there always has to be one that remains and always has to be one that goes. And then you have to take it in one direction off of your hex tile and slide them as far as they can possibly go until they hit the edge of the map, a hole in the map, or another stack of sheep. And so you're constantly splitting up your stack. And so the goal of the game is to try and spread out your sheep as far as you can on the map. And there's exactly enough hex tiles for everybody to spread out all their sheep. So the idea is that in order for you to beat anybody else, you have to cut people off and try and get in their way.
So it's battle sheep, right?
Yes, battle sheep.
Do they, do sheep fight sheep? Or is it a war of location?
It is a war of grazing, yeah.
So, you would try to, strategically cut off a large portion of the map so that somebody else can't get into that.
Yeah, exactly. My strategy ended up being, during the map building phase, build a nice long tendril off of one side of the map, and then put my sheep right at, kind of where the tendril joined up with the rest of the map, and then, I leave half of my sheep there, and then just kind of move the other half forward a little bit so that people couldn't get into the back half, and then I would just claim as much as I could around the front of it, and then once I was done there, I would just slowly fill in the back. And that worked fairly well until they realized that what I was doing, and then they started doing similar things, and I had to come up with something else.
Got to break the meta again.
Yeah.
How many sheep do you start with?
16, I think it was.
And they all have to be in the same stack at the beginning?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So then you have to, but you could in theory move half of them in one direction, half of them in the other direction from the starting point, but it just takes 2 turns to do that or something?
Yeah, and you always have to leave one, so you could move 8 all the way to the left as your first move, wait until it comes around, move 7 all the way to the right.
Okay.
And then be pretty well spaced out at that point.
Yeah.
Or you start off at that one place where you want to have a bunch of them and make sure you have a great line of sight to the opposite side of the map. Yeah. And just send half of them out there, and then you can have some variety for what you can do.
Is the shape of the map the same each time? Just the tiles are different? Or could it be like this one's an S shape because we all decided to make a big S shape?
Yeah, the very first time we played this, I played this game for the first time at a work holiday party when we went to Across the Board Game Cafe.
Nice.
Shout out. Yo. And it was the first time only one of us, actually I don't think any of us had played it. One guy had heard of it, and so he sought it out. But so we all just kind of put all of our tiles right in a big clump, so basically just made one giant hex shape. And that was probably a good way to be an intro to the game, so we had an understanding of how it worked. And then after that, we started messing with it a little bit. We made some islands, some pockets in the middle that were notched out because things kind of wrapped around. And then we started making these big tendril-y things. And then at one point, when the long tendrils stopped working for me, I started making big swooping islands so I could cut off one side and then go and cut off the other side. So it looked like it wasn't a tendril, but basically was. And then putting weird islands in the middle so you can't just shoot all the way across the map anymore. You'd hit things in the middle.
By island, you mean there's a little gap?
Sorry, yeah, a lake or whatever.
Yeah, sure, okay. Your sheep can't graze in the lake.
Exactly, yeah.
Classic sheep.
No. Yeah. Can't trust them.
Get learned, sheep.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, so I thought that was a pretty interesting game and nice and simple, and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds sweet. I would play Battle Sheep. Speaking of hex grids that change every time you play, this game is called The Quest for El Dorado. Not Dorado, as I thought after.
Wait, what's it called? El what?
The Quest for El Dorado. El Dorado,
yeah.
City of Gold.
Yes.
Rather than as opposed to the City of Cold. Winnipeg shout out.
Oh.
Gotcha.
Yep. Cool. So how does that work?
Oh, so there's these big swaths of grid, and you line them all up so that it's kind of a line, kind of a snake, and you start at one end. Everybody starts right beside each other. Right over here where I'm pointing.
Yep. Good audio medium.
Still learning.
Yep.
And you have to get all the way to El Dorado, which is the very end of the everything.
Mm-hmm.
Of the path. Now, what's unique about this game is that not only is it a race from the beginning to the end through different types of terrain, but it's a deck building game. It's like Dominion if it was a race.
Interesting. That sounds really curious.
Oh, and it's the simplest deck building game I've played. These cards are this card just is a $2 coin. Done. This card lets you walk through one wooded area or one water or one city. Done. So simple. The most text there is like one fairly short sentence, and it's all has icons anyway. You can figure it out.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It also has a nice what's it called? Like a rubber banding mechanic, like the blue shell in Mario.
Oh, so it keeps everybody together. Yeah.
And it's clever. So what it does is there are these zigzag things that go between some of those big hex pads you've put down, and no one can go through until someone has basically paid the cost to break the gate for everyone. So you kind of get stopped up a bit until someone has enough like gold or enough walking over shrubbery ability. I don't know how the fiction works.
Yep.
Enough wilderness explorers, I guess, to make it through the first time, and then no one has to make it through that zigzag. It's broken open. So if you have a lead, you will lose a bit of a turn if you're the first one to go through.
Right.
It's cool.
Oh, and when I played it, I played with two people who had wildly different strategies. My strategy was that I wanted to be able to do a little bit of everything in my deck, and then halfway through the adventure, pick up no new cards. Just try to get a bit of everything, and then not waste my turn buying stuff. Yeah. Just move every turn.
Thin decks and deck building games are surprisingly effective.
And someone else wanted an even thinner deck. So they, instead of having a little bit of everything, they wanted, like, just the wild cards, basically. So they went to the special locations where you can thin your deck. And so they tried to make their deck as potent as possible, rather than as universal as possible. And they almost caught up. If it was one more turn, they would have had it.
Oh yeah. So is in this game, is the map the same every time, or how does it work?
No, these hex pads. This we played the default like setup, like play with this one to start.
Sure, yeah.
But it's, I don't know. You can do whatever you like.
The Race to El Dorado is the name of this game.
No.
What's it called?
The Quest for El Dorado.
Oh, I got the wrong.
Yours is better.
Noun and
it is a race
and preposition.
The race for El Dorado.
Yeah.
Quest. It's the quest.
So look that one up if you can
race quest.
Figure out what it is that we said.
We'll make show notes or something.
Yes, Quest for El Dorado. Final answer.
It's so good.
Nice. Oh, that does sound like a good time. I am a huge fan of Dominion, so that very much intrigues me.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, Dominion kind of started the deck building. Were they the first, or just the most like refined one that people remember?
I'm not sure. That's the main one I've played, other than like, you know, those collectible card games where you build your own decks that way.
Yeah. I do think that Dominion is the first that uses that sort of mechanic where you build the deck as part of the game. You know. Mm-hmm. I think.
It was the first one I ever played. I can't say for sure whether it was the first, but
it's so smart. Imagine a dice version where because it's like you're choosing your odds of what you'll be able to do on your turn, right?
That is true.
It's like you're choosing the faces of the dice you're playing with.
Interesting. Yeah, like a game where you could have like stickers or something, like a giant dice face, and you could like put down on the dice, like, this is the outcome that happens when I roll this thing.
Well, maybe that's like a roll for the galaxy.
What's that one? I don't think I've played that.
That's one where you buy dice to add to your roll every year or every turn, right?
And the different dice have different odds or different things they're more likely to let you do.
Yeah.
Or things that this die just can't do.
I guess instead of stickers, you could just like say that the number 2 does this thing. That'd be a little bit more convenient, but same idea.
Yeah.
Like you're deciding what the odds are going to be for this thing to happen.
So when you have a lean deck, like Ben was talking about, that's making, like, giving you quite a bit of certainty over what's going to happen.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a bigger deck means more flexibility, but, like, you know, when you have a handful of coppers or, you know, whatever.
If you need that one specific card, your odds of getting it are very slim.
Mm-hmm.
It's like playing those scratch-and wins versus the Super Bowl. What do they call that? Fancy Lotto. I don't gamble. Please don't gamble. But one is like 1,000,000,000 to 1 odds,
Yeah.
and sometimes nobody wins it.
Yeah.
And the other is like, you'll probably get like your money's worth after you did 10 of them for 1 card or something.
Yeah.
Speaking of putting stickers on games.
Oh, dang. Nice transition, Ben. So we're going to talk about legacy games. Ooh. Legacy games. So for the uninitiated, imagine...
Such as Daniel and myself.
Yeah.
Such as most of the room. Legacy games are board games, which usually have the word legacy in the name, where you play once, and while you're playing, you do things like add stickers to the game, or tear up cards, or scrawl words on cards, so that the next time you play, it's a different game. And these games, most of them I've heard of have a season, or like a story you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
So after the 4th game, you'll pick up a certain card, and it'll say, now there are these new red dice, and these red dice mean that a quarter of the time you explode. Have fun. This is your new game. And they'll have some fun story element, like, these red dice they represent the volcanic rumblings under the earth, and the earth is angry, and the game's more difficult now.
That concept is super crazy sounding. Like, with a lot of these games these days, there's a lot of advanced mechanics, and with something like this where you play it once, like that seems like such a crazy way to do things. It sounds like it almost has to be kind of like a choose your own adventure sort of thing where you don't actually choose. It's like dice or card rolls or something. Like there might be some elements of choice, but
playing Pandemic Legacy, it doesn't feel like you have macro choice, but you have lots of micro choice. Like you're making decisions constantly about what to do, and you're trying to think like, oh, things are probably going to get worse. Maybe we should prepare by having another one of these so that in the next game, but oh no, we're under attack and you have to panic and worry about this now.
Right, yeah. I mean, I haven't played a lot of Pandemic, but like that's one of those games where like something bad could go wrong in about 5 different ways, like next turn.
There's no good choices.
Every single one. Yeah, exactly. So legacy games, I have heard of the legacy version of Pandemic, but what else is out there that's legacy?
Well, I think the first was Risk Legacy.
Okay.
Which I don't know how that works.
Yeah. I
think from hearing people play it, you'll have a country that just got nuked and now it's radioactive, and so if you sit in there, you lose a person each turn or something. And so it's tougher to keep like that part of Asia now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Or they'll have big other world events that happen and just keep mixing up the game.
I like the idea of that. I think the immediate, for thinking pros and cons list, the immediate con is that like, while it is exciting to see these things happen to your game, it's like now your game has been shoehorned into this one option, and it's like you have converted this game into this version of this game because of the choices that you made.
Right.
Yeah. It's a version that no one else has ever played.
Yeah. So I guess both pro and con. Because like, you know, you've purchased this thing, and now it's this. It's come out to this. Granted, I guess the world has so many board games in it at this point that it's like, well, we may as well have one that does this. Like we're trying something here. I haven't played anything like that, like I said, so it does sound like fun, like discovering what this version is that you're gonna have.
I'm playing another one.
Yeah.
Called Charterstone, which I have to pronounce that way. I'm not sure why. And it's Pandemic Legacy is cooperative, right?
Right.
Which is great. We're on a team. I'm playing with people who are so competitive they need to be on a team. It's wonderful. It's a perfect game because we're competitive against the board.
Yes.
But Charterstone is competitive with each other. Like it's not cooperative. And it's a worker placement game. So you have a limited amount of workers. You choose what things they do, and that gives you value, and you can trade stuff. What's unique about this one is you choose what the options are for people to put their workers on in a permanent way. So, for example, I'm near the bricks, but I chose to make no brick buildings because everyone else's buildings were cool, and I just used their buildings.
Huh. So, in future plays, these workers are already, like, out and doing stuff? Or what?
The buildings are there.
Oh, the building. I see.
Yeah. So the game starts, and there's the 6 in the middle that you can do, and 1 off to the side. But then, Jana played this one, and now we can do 2 gold for 1, whatever. Like, everyone has a 2 for 1 trade they can do. And so that changes the game. But building things costs money, but it gives you victory points. And there are victory points for the game, and then things that give you points for the whole, like, season, I guess. And so you're trying to balance those out. So we're playing a version of Charterstone that no one else has played or will ever play.
Okay, so what is a season in this game? Like, because you said for a game there's an effect, for a season there's an effect, so how does that work?
Oh, season, I mean how Pandemic Legacy says season?
Sure.
Which is, like, you play 12 games and then your board is spent.
Okay.
That's what I mean by season. Like,
Okay.
one story.
Yeah, like season in the TV sense. Like, this is one season of the game, and now you have to buy season 2 of the game.
That's right.
I see. Yeah. Cool.
So question for you. Now that you're all informed about legacy games and have some examples, what games do you wish or don't wish would have legacy versions?
Interesting.
That is super interesting. When I think about a game, well, let's take, for example, like, the game King Domino. Let's just...
I was
like,
hoping you'd say that.
Right. Like, if we take examples of some of these things, like, in King Domino, you're expanding a kingdom, and it's like this physical thing in front of you, so by the end of game one, I'm already talking like it's a legacy game. By the end of a game, you have a 5x5 grid. So if this was a legacy game...
Yeah, like, would Queen 2 be season 2? Like, would you
there you go.
be coming in and then building other stuff on top of the map you've already got going? And
Right. Like, you just have, like, a giant board that has just...
You've glued down your tiles
all over it, yes. The thing, too, about King Domino is that it looks really nice. So, like, you could maybe, by the time you're done playing this game and you have this kingdom that you've built, then you have, like, something, like, a piece of art at the end of it. Mm-hmm. That would be kind of cool.
With Charterstone, you can keep playing the game on that board once the season's done.
Yeah.
Because now you just have, these are your shop options. That's fun. It's a setup of the game you can play.
Okay.
Or you can flip it over and then buy, like, a little expansion thing and then do it all again.
Oh, cool.
So here's a wild idea. What if there was a legacy jigsaw puzzle? Yeah.
Go on.
That's the name of our podcast now.
Go on.
Go on. And it's always said hesitantly.
So good.
Go on podcast. So what if... so it's like a nice picture when it's done, right? And then you have paint, and then you paint parts of it. So, like, one section is just fully white. And then you take it all apart, and you have to do it again. And it's tougher now, because part of it's just white.
Yeah, you have to pay attention to the brush strokes or something.
Yeah. And as it keeps going, eventually, by the end of it, it's an entirely different picture that you've made somehow.
Huh.
Yeah.
So, like, every time you finish it, you add something to it.
Yeah.
Add a big brush stroke to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
paint it. Maybe it gets harder.
you could do that with any jigsaw puzzle in existence. You should do that, and then come back next time we have a podcast and tell us how it went, and tell us if it's a viable legacy game.
I should just go to the thrift store and buy all those puzzles no one's buying.
You absolutely should.
And then put the word legacy on them with a paint set.
Rebrand, yeah, just
$50.
Yes, include a paintbrush and a little paint set. You're good to go.
And like a DVD of Bob Ross or something. Just to get you started.
Man. Could we take other old things from a thrift store that could become a legacy game? Like maybe we turn Monopoly into a decent game by making it legacy?
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Like Boardwalk.
Every time you get to add your own house rule that you would normally be playing with.
Yeah.
Until it turns into your house rule version. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what happens with Monopoly anyway.
I think so.
Maybe house rule
Yeah.
Monopoly is legacy Monopoly.
But
Whenever
our-
I played Monopoly growing up, we always played it with like 2 or 3 boxes worth of money and buildings. And yeah, it was pretty excellent. It would go on for like 3 days.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't think you can play Monopoly without getting to hour 2 or 3 and not, like, saying, okay, we gotta do this instead.
You know, I think it'd be fun to play Monopoly as a legacy version, just so I can, like, mess up a game of Monopoly.
And
There's
set
enough-
fire to it afterwards.
There's enough in existence that, you know, harming one is not so bad.
I probably have 3 boxes at home. They just show up.
Yeah. This is not necessarily a legacy thing, but I've heard of a Magic the Gathering set where like there are cards, and I think one of these sets just came out. I didn't have this particular card, but I've heard of this silly card where, like, when you draw it and play it, you tear it into pieces and, like, blow it onto the game board, and wherever all the little pieces of the card touches, all those creatures and spells that you have out on the table have to be discarded if they're hit with this, like, card dust
Yeah, that is amazing.
that you blow into the table.
Yeah, that's so incredible.
It's like, it is legacy in the fact that your game has changed forever from that point.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was like a pretty rare card that Wizards of the Coast put out. Like, it was...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine that it's not like a legal
Tournament.
if you're like a tournament, if you're like a hardcore Magic the Gathering player.
Oh,
I
would that be
imagine
so
it's not.
fun? It's the final game, and he's got the one use card.
Yeah.
There's only 3 left in existence.
Wait, 2.5, 2.
Man, what else could be legacy? I like those games where you're talking about, like, the El Dorado game and the sheep game. They both, what was the sheep one called again?
Battle Sheep.
Battle Sheep, yes. So, like, those games where you're sort of, like, building a board, I mean, like, in theory, you could just, like, keep building a board, like...
Yeah.
Like, if you kept on... Like, if a game had a means for you to keep on, like, purchasing different segments of board... I mean, by that point, it's turning into, like, Lego or something, but, like, you know...
Legacy.
Yeah.
So legacy.
And then by the time...
Thanks, man.
Like... Like, if as soon as the game, like, outgrows your table at home, then you have to, like, call your friends and see who has a bigger table. And then, like, once it outgrows their table, then you have to bring it to, like, the local community center and, like, keep the game growing and, like, have dozens of people in on the game that you're making.
And there's a special shipping company that comes to exist that just specializes in moving this so it doesn't break. Well, legacy games. What a good time. I'm happy to be living in a time where board games are evolving and finding all these new ways to tickle us, tickle our brains. Well, that's it for Games Explained podcast. Tune in next time when we talk about insert robot voice of topic once decided. We're Games Explained, and that's
How to Podcast, Episode 1.